Okay, we're back with Dan Lebental, editor of Iron Man. So tell me, how long was the first cut compared to what was ultimately released?
Well, the first cut was around 3 hours and 10 minutes, I believe. And the other thing about it is that we had reshoots as well for probably 20, I would say 15 to 20 minutes of fresh material.
Wow.
So you could say that as opposed to the final movie, you could say that almost an hour and a half of scenes got cut out.
Wow, that's a lot of material.
Yeah,
there was on the DVD or
there will be a lot on the DVD, and then there will be some that won't be. But I always keep a bulletin board with pictures of every scene, and I have on the bottom I have something I call Death Row, and those are the scenes that have been taken out. And it was the biggest death row I have ever had. I felt like a Texas governor at that point. Lots of scenes on the ready to go. Yeah.
And what's the process like? I mean, just walk us through a little bit. I mean, how do you go through and just say, it's time to get rid of this? I mean, obviously with the director.
Yeah. Well, as you know, what we do, we make our assembly, which I'm cutting as they're shooting, and about a week or so after they're finished shooting, I show this first version, the assembly, to everybody, which that was the 3 hours and 10, and then the director comes in, and hopefully they can keep their lunch down, because that's every director I've ever met, that's the hardest moment of the film, because the object of the assembly is to tell them, here's what we've got to work with.
Right.
This is everything. Now, what are we going to do with it? And so usually I already have a whole game plan in my head that's been dying to go down, but out of respect for a director, I won't start cutting his material till I've at least shown it to him.
Absolutely.
So, then we talk and we start trying things on, and it's funny, I would say on Iron Man, more than any other movie I ever did, no stone went unturned. We tried all sorts of variations. We tried a linear version of the movie, where, right now the movie begins at a certain point and then catches up to itself again.
Right.
We tried a version that didn't, that went in complete order. We at that point, we felt that didn't work because of the likability of the main character, that you wanted to feel a little something bad for him before you saw what kind of guy he started out as.
Yeah, transformation.
Yeah. So so we started off in this, and then we did the director's cut for our 10 weeks, and then started including the studio. Now, because of this new process we've been talking about, at least the first 4 weeks of the director's wasn't even spent so much editing as getting effects turnovers.
Yeah.
So which
lock effect sequences.
I personally objected to, but there's no other way around it, because as I say, in my world, that's the cart leading the horse. I want to tell the story and then have the effects done to service it.
I feel exactly the same, and I've been through the same dilemma, which is, how do you lock sequences when you don't know what your story is yet, or you don't have a firm grip on it? So.
And I think what we find is that we're not really locking sequences, we're just putting them in motion. And then, an awful lot of things, there was an awful lot of shots that only went, a quarter way through the effects process that stop the presses, we're doing something different here.
Right.
So, that it continues to evolve. Once we finished the director's cut, we screened it for the studio. And then they got involved, and more than any other studio I've ever worked for, these Marvel, Kevin Feige and Jeremy Latcham, who is the junior executive, they really cared and were involved. I mean, these people live and breathe the whole Marvel thing.
Sure.
So, they would sit in an awful lot on everything. So
That's
we all
great.
developed it together, so that everyone, it was very
It was a
very
positive,
interesting.
collaborative
It was a
effort,
very positive collaboration, like I hadn't really experienced before,
as opposed to
But
the egos trying to jockey for credit.
no, yeah, everyone was just trying to make the best film, and it was, there were scary moments. There were times when it was felt like, for instance, one of the most difficult things was the cave sequence, because in the assembly, the cave sequence runs 55 minutes.
Wow.
In the final film, it runs 25 minutes.
Wow.
So, but all of the story was spread out all across it. So, how do you shrink that down and still get all these beats that have to happen to make any sort of sense at all? And that was my biggest conundrum, was to solve that. That eventually got solved. It was funny because it was for so long the biggest problem in the movie, and then one day I found a different sort of solution to it. I actually took what one producer viewed as his biggest criticism of it, and then said, well, if that's the case, then let me swing it on its ear and make that what it's all about.
Wow.
And so, and that being that they were under surveillance, so how it all worked.